Can you guys see me and hear me now? Can somebody type in if you can see and hear me, please? No? Yes. And yes to both, right, Claudia? Okay, wonderful. Okay, sorry about that. Let's get started. So, good afternoon and good morning if you are on Central Time or Pacific. Good morning, nutraMetrix. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the implementation meeting. So I hope you have your implementation meeting agenda handy. If not, we're going to get into this part of the meet on today in about 5 or 7 minutes or so. I want to talk about a few things beforehand so you can go ahead and get that. So first I want to just frame it. So when you're already talking about an implementation meeting, you've already had an initial contact, whether that be warm or cold, doesn't matter. You've already had a discovery meeting, you've already done a proposal, and now you're at the implementation meeting, okay? So following that flow is really important because it's kind of like when we talk with Market America on regular prospects, we talk about bringing them from cold to warm to hot. You don't want to bring a doctor from cold to hot. There's a process that happens. So you always want to follow the process. Even if that contact is warm, you still want to kind of don't shortcut it, bring them all the way through. So a question I often get when we start talking about the implementation meeting is a lot of people ask me, at what point are you setting up the account? And what you're going to hear if you start asking other NCs that question is, it will really vary the responses. However, for myself and in my experience, what I have found is you actually do not want to set up the account until you've had the implementation meeting. The implementation meeting is so very important. When I first started with my career as nutraMetrix consultant, I would listen to the meet-ons, I would hear the audios, and I heard, Lauren and Brandy and just people talk about how the implementation was so crucial, the implementation meeting was so crucial and so important, and you shouldn't shortcut the process. And, as a new NC, you get out there and you're like so happy to just have a meeting. It doesn't matter what kind of meeting you have, that you just move through the process like as quickly as possible. And then after the proposal, you've shared the numbers and you've kind of gotten to know the practice a little bit. There are some doctors that'll be like, okay, let's go. I'm ready to get started. Set up my account. And the temptation is to pull out that sheet and set up the account right there. And I've done that. And, I really want to have you take a step back and not fall into that temptation. I want you to go ahead and do the implementation meeting because as we're going to see in a minute when we go through the questions on the implementation meeting is so key to setting up a successful practice. When, with my first few initial practices, I always kind of go back in my mind. I'm so a measure, monitor, adjust, and control type of person, so I'm always looking at what did I do here, what did I not do, what could I have done better, what did I do wrong, or maybe not enough. And so I think that as you go through a few of these discovery meetings, proposals, and implementations, you're going to find what I have found, that this implementation meeting is so key and so important to really beginning to set up the practice correctly, set up the account correctly, and then allow you to measure, monitor, adjust, and control as you move forward with the account, whether that be on a quarterly basis, which I highly recommend, also every 6 months, etc. And then you can turn back around to the doctor, when you've been working with the implementation for 6 months or 12 months, you can turn around to the doctor and say, okay, there's a few things that aren't working, or, these things are doing great. Here are some things that I've noticed we're struggling with. Why do you think it is, doctor? Here's what we've done. You have a track to run on. You really are setting yourself up to kind of have this, layout. That's what the implementation meeting agenda, as we're going to go through, really lays out for you. In one of my careers, for the first 10 years of my career, I was in social services, training, etc. And then for the next 10 years, I was in software. as a project manager, business analyst, etc. And in project management, we did very much with the discovery. We had like a proposal type of thing, and then we had the implementation plan, which is like the project plan. And then you knew beyond the shadow of a doubt what you had to do next and how long the task was going to take and what was supposed to be the outcome of that task. And that's pretty much what I relate the implementation meeting to. So before we get into the details of the implementation meeting, um, I've had some experiences where I set up an account. I set up one account and before the implementation meeting. And the story goes that, everything was peachy. It was fine and dandy. The doctor and the staff were all happy and, oh my gosh, we're going to do this and it's going to be so great. So let's go ahead and get started. And I pulled out the account setup sheet and she got everything started before we really did the implementation meeting. Of course, I identified the products, etc., but really nothing more at that point. And so we set up the account and I scheduled the appointment for the implementation meeting. When I go to begin the implementation meeting, and this was in the old format that we used where it was the mission, vision, and the roles, and it was all kind of broken up like that. And she wound up saying, well, no, I don't want any marketing materials. I'm not going to put posters on my walls. No, I don't want a product display because I see a lot of kids and they're going to be playing with the empty products. No, I don't want to train my staff because I don't think that it's their job to do this. I'm going to do it. No, I don't want to do this. So every option or every strategy for implementation that I gave this doctor, she shot down. It was like a no, 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 no. And at the end of the day, it wound up that all she wanted to do was have like the one page, the patient protocols, and refer people to her website. She refused to do a welcome letter. She refused to do to have people do the wellness sheet, with the wellness number line. She refused to register patients so that they would already have an ID for the website. So everything that I recommended, she refused. So what do you think happened with the practice? Nothing, right? If you don't really want to do it the way that we've systemized it, it's not going to work. So it wound up that nothing happened. The account went absolutely nowhere, and I learned my lesson. And the lesson is now I don't set up an account without having had an implementation meeting in full detail. Okay? So that's one of the reasons that I believe the implementation meeting is key and important. But there's another reason, and there's a reason that for folks that are a little bit like weary about asking for the sale or closing, for example, in our process and the way we've created nutraMetrix, it flows, guys. Like you're going from the initial contact to the discovery. Then at the end of the discovery meeting, you're like, do you have any questions? No, great. Okay, when do we have 20 to 30 minutes? And financial projections. And after the financial, we've done the proposal. Do you have any questions? No, great. Okay, the next step is we're always in our process of market to market, we're always saying to the prospect, it doesn't matter if it's a prospect, a doctor, whoever it is, the next step is, the next step is, the next step is. So what happens is that you should never really feel like you're selling, okay? This is why we don't come in to a practice with bottles of OPC or anything like that, because we're not selling. We're just exploring the mission and vision of the doctor, the practice, and then we're putting together whatever that next step is. Discovery, proposal, implementation meeting, okay? So when you get to the implementation meeting, and we're going to look at some of the questions here in the flow process, by the end of the implementation meeting, you're assuming the close. If the doctor has not stopped you, okay, to that point, the next step is, doctor, let's talk about, terms and conditions and the account setup sheet. Okay? So really, it just flows very nicely and gradually. What you're finding, or you will find if you haven't gone out there and done it yet, but I know that myself and a lot of NCs that I work with, what they're finding is the doctor will stop you somewhere along the way if he's not ready and won't allow you to go all the way to the implementation meeting. Because what happens is that if he allows you to go all the way to the implementation meeting, then he's wasting his time if he's not going to implement. And you're wasting your time. And what I love about working with health professionals is they don't waste their time. And consequently, they don't waste your time. If they're not interested, they're going to say they're not interested. Now, I love the presentation. I know Brandy has done it a few times. She's recommended a few books to read, like about the personality types. You know, the person that never wants to say no, etc. You'll find that those personality types are very true and valid with all prospects, including doctors, because doctors are people too. Okay. And that doctor that I gave the example of that didn't want to do anything, I think that she was a yes, 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 yes all the way through because she was one of those personality types that kind of doesn't want to disagree. But then when it got to a point where it would feel uncomfortable for her or she wasn't really comfortable, she was absolutely okay with saying no. Now she said no in a really nice tune. She was like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that, with a smile on her face, but it was still a no. So, you'll know and you'll understand how that process is so that they could get all the way there. However, for the most part, when they get to the implementation meeting agenda, and what happens is that um, without this implementation meeting outlined, you are, as I've got a question here that I just clicked over, you really are setting yourself up to fail. That's what the individual, the NC that's on the call right now just said. Without it, you're setting yourself up to fail. And I couldn't agree more. You really are setting yourself up to fail. And we work so hard, as NCs to secure the account. And it's a numbers game. And it's just, I don't want to work that hard to get to that point, and it's a dud, you know? So now let's go ahead and go through the implementation meeting agenda. So as you notice in the latest NC practice planning guide, we did change things around a little bit more. Here's what I encourage you, before we get into the detail here, here's what I encourage that you do. It's a conversation, guys. Become very familiar with the questions on the form. It should flow. It should be a conversation. When I'm meeting health professionals now, I initially, from the initial contact, and if you go back and watch some of the meet-ons, you'll see I say, I implement customized wellness systems that align to your mission and vision. So I start with the mission and vision at the very beginning. Okay, if you look at my business card on the back, it says I implement customized wellness solutions based on mission and vision, because that just takes away they're asking me questions of what is it, because then I can easily say, I don't know what it is because I don't know your mission and vision. I don't know your practice. I don't know, your patients, what they're looking for. I don't know what that is. I could have worked with hundreds of doctors, but I don't know you. You're different. You're unique. And everybody likes that. Everybody likes to be, okay, you're listening to me and my needs. So since you start with mission and vision at the beginning and you let it flow through discovery meeting, proposal, etc., then by the time you get to the implementation meeting, you really should know the mission and vision of the health professional. But that's okay. If you don't know it to this point, that's absolutely fine. This is the opportunity to begin to talk about it, okay? This is the opportunity to begin to know it, to begin to explore it. So what you'll do, and now I'm looking at the actual meeting agenda, the top of the page says mission, vision, and destination. What I'm finding with myself now, when I have an account that's struggling, I kind of scratch my head and I go, okay, why did they start nutraMetrix? And I go back to my notes and I go back to the implementation meeting and I go back to, and I go, and I look at why they started. And then I'll come back to them. I'll say, okay, we're not hitting our goals as I'd like to, as you'd like to, as you said you wanted to when you got started, because that's here too. And we're going to talk about that. I'll say to them, when we met, doctor, you told me that you wanted to blah, blah, blah. Okay? And I am always checking back. And it's kind of the same like when we work with a prospect in Market America, right? You go through the getting started guide, you ask them their goals, you ask for their why. And then what do? Later on, 3, 4, 5 months into it, when they're watching TV, they're not going to the meeting, you can go back and you say, you said you wanted to create a college fund for your daughter. Has that changed? Is that not important to you anymore? Okay, so do you see where I'm getting at? And so that really is key, but that comes from what you collected here. Now, if you already got a lot of information about the mission and vision, you can pre-populate this information. I do bring the form in. Some people ask me, do you bring the form in? Absolutely. I bring the form in. This becomes part of what's in my binder. When you talk to so many doctors and you work with so many different accounts, you forget. I mean, I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I forget. Yeah, I have to take my isotonics, but I forget. So I go back and I refer to what I wrote down. So page 1 is conversation questions, the how. At the first meeting, I asked you to look 5, 10, 15 years into the future. You would already have that written down, and you said this, doctor. Is that still hold true? Now that you've established a relationship with this health professional a little bit more things may come out. Okay, so you'll go through the questions here, and I'm not going to go in detail through the questions. I just kind of want to look at the bones and the kind of skeletal structure of the implementation meeting and kind of add in certain keys. You all know how to read, so you can kind of go through and read each one of these questions, and I highly recommend that you do that. So if we turn to page 2, you'll see that before we move forward, we need to craft a vision statement. It's interesting because I've heard this crafting a vision statement for a really, long time since I got started. And I've tried to do it with a few practices. And then, when I was starting and then did it successfully. Then I was traveling in Mexico, and I was talking to some staff of the health professionals. And it was so interesting because before I mentioned, and we were already implemented, of course, I was working with the consultant, the account's already implemented. We were doing more of like a staff 1, 2, 3 for the practice. And one of the staff members said, it's really important for us to know the mission and the vision of the doctor and the practice and what he intends to do, because we pick up the phone, we get asked questions, and we need to understand how to answer those. I was like, wow, that's exactly what we do. We craft these statements. But it was just really nice to hear the validation from a staff member before I had said it. So it wasn't like she was agreeing with me. I hadn't even said it yet. That this is what that staff person needed in order to adequately help the doctor achieve what he or she wanted to achieve. So, that was just an eye-opening experience for me because I'm like, oh, brilliant. It's not just stuff on paper that, we do. So it was really cool. But that's the mission statement at the top. And then you go for goal setting and your why. So here's where we're going to talk basic numbers. Year 1, year 5, year 10. Just basic numbers, okay? And this is important because, as you know, we do have a goal setting worksheet that's already all done and identified. And all you have to do is put the numbers in for each one of the products. And it breaks it down by day, by month, how many patients they have to talk to. And I highly recommend that you complete that goal sheet so that you understand, not only you, but the health professional understands the numbers, okay? Because they get so busy in the different things, and if they don't understand what's the goal for today, and we have other tools. If you look in the NCE practice planning guide, we have other tools in there that'll help them tally. I'm supposed to do 3 OPC. I did 2 for today. I'm supposed to do, etc. This also keeps the staff in check. When I go back and I visit my practices and I ask them, why the dips, and it's funny because I notice like heights when I arrive and visit, and then dips. And then you know what? They respond to me, especially the new ones. They say, oh, we forget. Oh, I forget to bring it up. We forget. So it's like they're not talking about it because they forgot. So this sheet, allows them to have it visibly, and a lot of them, what I say is you want to print it out and you want to put it like, right behind your desk or right next to your computer, right there, so that you don't forget, so that it's like on the top of your mind and you're talking about it all the time. But they have to know what they want to achieve. If they say they want to achieve $50,000 in year one, now you know that's going to take some ramp up. And what I highly recommend that you tell doctors right out of the gate is it's going to take ramp up. If you start with 2 patients a day, at the end of the first week, you got 10, okay? At the end of the second week, you got another 10. So that's 20, 30, 40. Then we go into month 2. What happens is the first 10 are ready to reorder. So now you have a new 10, but you have the additional 10 reorders. You kind of have to go through those details with the health professional so that they can visualize it and they can see it. And that's what that goal sheet is for. And so here, then we go into implementation products and phases. So when I initially conduct a proposal, like in my mind, I may have phase 2 and phase 3. If I know that there are some health professionals that give you so much information at the discovery meeting that is like crystal clear what phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 is going to be. But I will talk about phase 1 in a lot of detail, but I'll just skim over phase 2 and phase 3, and I won't have the numbers because I think it's just a little too much information for that proposal meeting. So where do I talk about phase 2 and phase 3? I do it here. Here's where I say, doctor, I was thinking phase 2 could be, your TLS 21 days. So maybe they've already had all these things in phase 1, which were isotonic products, omegas, etc. Now phase 2, we're going to do with a TLS. And maybe they're going to identify a coach at that point that's going to really help them bring that forward. Then phase 3 may be a gene snip, or maybe a custom cocktail or something like that. So we'll talk about it, and they'll start to engage and talk to you also about the products that they want. Okay, so then you get to the office process flow and the questions that are here. What happens with the patients, all these questions. What I like to do is I like to take the clinic walkthrough form, and I know that Sarah did a meet on this, and I actually and I'll gauge the doctor to see if he's getting really into it. There are a lot of health professionals that get so into the implementation meeting that they're like, oh, well, let me just walk you around. And then I'll have that clinic walkthrough sheet because I'll do both at the same time. It makes sense in at least my brain that when I'm going through the office flow, I'm walking physically with the doctor. And what I like to do, just because I like to understand the doctors, I like to say to them, hey, can you give me your intake paperwork so I can see that, and your revisit paperwork, so reoccurring. So I'm a new patient versus I'm a patient that comes in. It helps me to see it. Usually what I'll notice is that the paperwork aligns to the mission and vision. If the doctor said he was really into holistic care, etc., then a lot of the questions that they're asking are very much holistic type questions. If they said that they're interested in this, that, and the other, they align. And so I like to pull it out because I like to always complement the practice. I like to implement the wellness intake sheet, but I'll complement. If I notice that on their intake form, they're already asking everything except for that little number line, then maybe we just pull that number line out, put it on their form, and then implement it into their system, rather than creating a brand new form, because a lot of doctors will be very resistant and push back on forms. However, what will happen is that they'll be able to just take in a recommendation to modify their forms. So here you have the questions that are here. So we're identifying, who's going to take the patient back. Here's what we're talking about. There's going to be a login, doctor. I'm going to, we have this system, and we're going to teach your patients how to, or not your patients, sorry, your staff members how to register the patient. It's going to take 30 seconds, etc. So I'm going to go through all of this. If it's flowing smoothly, if I think back to that account I talked about where the doctor didn't want to do anything, trust me, if I would have gone through this implementation meeting, she would have stopped me. She would have been like, no, I can't do that. No, the flow's not going to be like that. No. And then I would have known to say, you know what? I don't think that we're a good fit for your practice. Okay. So if everything's going smoothly, and the doctor's not stopping you, okay, or asking you questions or customizing it, then you can move on to the next one, which is, the marketing support options. What do you need for the wall, etc. And then you're going to schedule the implementation trainings. And this is, the staff 1, 2, 3, and then it says train key staff. So, for example, if they're going to have a staff member doing their orders, you're going to train them on franchise on how to create orders. You're going to train the people on the staff 3 is when you train the people to use the staff login. And then, of course, the product lunch and learns. The lunch and learns are just going to be ongoing, But what I like to do is I like to start a segment of a lunch and learn for every product that they have. So if they have an OPC, a B complex or a daily essentials kit, whatever it is, I would do a lunch and learn for each one of those components. Okay, and then we get into staff incentives, why for the incentives. So, I talk to them about how it's good and why they should have it. And then, of course, the business account options. Now, at this point, I I go through the different business account options, and then I go through the HP1 or HP account executive. At this point, I have a really good feel of the doctor. Is the doctor going to be somebody who's, very large, 5 different, facilities with 15 other doctors, or is it just one practitioner? I know their mission, I know their vision. If I am unsure of which way to go, HP1 or HP executive, I'll present it and I'll say, look, we have these 2 options. And I just present it in a blurb and this is, a retail option, etc. And then the HP, and I talk about no requirements. That's a big one. And then the HP executive option, I talk about it's based on referrals. It's based on, but you have no limits to, commissions and just a very high level. And then I kind of let them pick. If they say, I'm curious about HP executive, I think I want to go that route, I would say, great. And I would actually schedule another meeting just to quickly show them, or I'd have the slides if it's not too late. Because this meeting, if you do it right, is going to run you at least 30 minutes. I always try to be very sensitive of the doctor's time. So I like to understand if he's okay with trainings, if he's okay with requirements, and he's okay with referrals. I may not necessarily show him like the HP plan just yet. I'll sign him up as an HP executive, and then I'll show him the plan. Usually what winds up happening for the doctors that I've talked to HP executive about, those are doctors that I've identified it early for one reason or another. And then I'm already talking about what an HP executive is. And I'm talking about this kind of earlier rather than at this point. But you could do it at this point. And then go ahead and do that. I prefer, if I'm unsure, I prefer to go with HP1 and let them be successful and then approach them, 6 months later and say, we have another option, and I'll share it with them. One of my health professionals said, you know what, when I'm making $50,000 with your program, then I'll upgrade, but I'm not going to upgrade just yet. So, you'll get a variety of different answers to that piece. Okay. And so at that point, you're done with the questions in the implementation meeting, but I want you to get familiar with it because I want you to make it flow like in a conversation. Okay. The most important part about this implementation meeting, we've talked about laying down, here's what we're going to do, setting the account up for success, etc. But then your next step is you're going to start doing some staff trainings. And what I like to do is I take those staff 1, 2, 3 slides that we have in the back office, and those are the ones I use, but I always like to create a slide about the mission and vision of the doctor. So I'll customize. It's just like one slide. I say, the doctor has decided to implement with nutraMetrix because he or she wants to achieve boom, 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 boom. Then, of course, you took the time to craft the vision statement, right? So I'd have another slide that's, here's the vision statement. Here's what we're going to do when we answer the phone. So that's really the only customization I do to the particular staff 1, 2, 3 slides. I make it very specific to that doctor. If that doctor was going to integrate our number line into the system, or if that doctor told me right off the bat, I love your system, I'm going to use the posters, I'm going to use everything. But I know right out of the bat, I'm not using the wellness intake form and I'm not using the wellness number line because I have something. Let's just say, I'm just giving you an example that they said that, then I would remove anything that had the wellness intake form. Of course, I'd ask, great, that's the way we get the information for the patient login. So what are we going to do to get the information for the patient login? He could say something else. He could say, well, every time they come in, they have to fill this in. This is the form I want to use. Great. So I would just replace that with that form that he wants to use. So I try to really make it, when I introduced myself to this doctor, I said that I customized it. And yes, we have a beautiful system and you could just plug and play all the different components, but there's a piece of customization in every step of the way. And that's that piece for the staff 123. Okay. So with that, what I'm going to do at this point is open it up to questions, and then we can talk about some of the, also, I'd love you to share some experiences that you've had with doing the implementation meeting, with bypassing the implementation meeting, so that we can go ahead and share that with everyone. Questions? No questions. Okay, here we start them coming in. Great. Good for you, Susanna. Yes, Claudia says, I agree with waiting to open the account after the implementation meeting. And for those of you who don't know Claudia, she's here in the Chicago area. She has several health professional accounts. She's gone through the process. She's done warm, she's done cold. She's got quite a bit of experience working with health professionals in the area. And, I think that it's once you go through the process a few times, you know, um, you'll realize that some of the things that I've addressed here are really true. I've realized it from my mistakes. I mean, I think we all learn better from doing, and when we fall and we make a mistake and we get up and we say, oh, wow, why did that happen? You know, um, I just feel like you put a lot of work. I put a lot of work into my nutraMetrix business and into securing my accounts. And then when I get an account that just doesn't quite fully work, it's a lot of time, it's just a lot of time and effort. So we don't want to see you guys do that, which is why we put through these meet-ons, and we really are doing everything that we can do to help you guys and to really answer your questions and your comments and your concerns, because the system works. You just got to work it. How long do you train the staff? Okay, so if you look at, that's a good question. So if you look at the implementation sheet here, the staff 123 is 40, 20, and 30 minutes. That's the staff 1, 2, 3. What I like to do is the staff 1 and 2 is about an hour. So 40 plus 20 is an hour. I like to do those together. The reason I like to do those together is because when you actually look at the staff 1 and staff 2, the content kind of clumps together. It flows. When you look at staff 3 has some repetition from 2, and then it has the personalized process of the office flow. They're going to walk in, patient drives in the little car, they fill out this form, etc. And then that's when after I do the staff 3 is when I do the staff portal. So what winds up happening is there's repetition in the staff 3. So if you break those up, by the time you come back for the staff 3, the staff need the repetition. They need to hear again a few things. So the staff 1 and 2, I do together. I say it's an hour, and then the next one is a half hour. It's really going to be a little more. So what I say to the doctor is 1 hour, and then with the staff 3, it's 1 hour, but they're already using the back office. We're putting in patients that maybe have already come through for the day, and then getting the ball rolling that way. So that's the answer to the question, how long do I train the staff? And then when we do have new staff, I do, I haven't, to be completely honest with you, I haven't done a full staff 1, 2, 3 when we have new staff that come in, but I will sit with that person, individually, if it's one person or whatever, and I'll go through staff 3, and then I'll talk about the mission, etc., and I'll take them through, because you'll find that some practices have a lot of turnover, and then yes, you kind of have to retrain them all. Yep. Claudia says, I like having the idea of having the mission vision slide so that the staff sees it and understands where the health professional is coming from. It's really important. And to be honest, I mean, hey guys, when you watch my meet-ons, I'm honest. I'm honest. When I first started, I kind of was like, it feels a little weird, but I did it because remember, I've told you in one of the meet-ons, I do what you tell me to do. If you tell me I'm going to be successful doing something, even if it feels uncomfortable, I'll still do it. But I didn't really see the value in it. It wasn't until I started going to Mexico and I heard the staff person say, it's really important for us to understand why the health professional is doing this, because then at least we can buy into that. Like that was just like mind blowing for me because I'm sitting here thinking, oh, that makes sense now. Now I know I do it. Now, I'll do it more. Do you ever have the HP check the wording of the mission? Yes. Yeah, I usually craft it with them and I'll have them, maybe I'll email it to them or have them look at it. Most of them will be like, yeah, it's fine, no problem. I haven't had one that really kind of is stuck on it, but yeah, I just have them look at it. And I say to them, by the way, you don't have to do it right there because you're taking notes, you guys are engaged and you're talking. But then you can say to them, okay, well, I'm just going to put some things together to prepare for the staff training. I'd like you to just take a quick glance at a few things just to make sure that I'm providing the message that you want me to provide. And then maybe I'll shoot the email. Here's what I'm going to tell the staff. Does this look good to you? Do I need to change anything? And then if he says yes or he doesn't reply, then I assume it's good. And then I'll just touch base with him one more time. But then we move forward. Okay. So it doesn't seem like we have a whole lot of questions. Now, I'm not sure if we don't have a lot of questions. I'm not sure if and then this is going to be recorded, so you guys can come back and play it. And a lot of people who weren't able to join, I know I posted it kind of last minute, but it may be just because you haven't gotten there yet. I know when I was first starting with nutraMetrix, I wasn't too concerned about the implementation meeting because I just wanted to get a meeting. And so I was focused on the initial contact and I was focused on the discovery. And then when I had a few discoveries and I needed to do proposals, then I was focused on proposals. And then if you look at the numbers, and I highly recommend that as you do this, you're measure, monitoring, controlling your own business. You need to be honest with yourself. You need to say, how many phone calls did I make, and then write it down. And you'll get your own numbers. Okay, I've done 10 discovery meetings. Of those discovery meetings, how many have turned into proposals? How many? So you'll see that the numbers dwindle, of course. You might do 10, then you might do 6 proposals, then you might do 3 implementation meetings, and then they stop you somewhere, then you'll set up an account. But what happens is as you look through, definitely keep track of those numbers, because if you're doing 15 discovery meetings and you have no proposals booked, you're doing something wrong, okay? If you have 6 proposals done and you're getting no implementation meetings, we may need to tweak something. So, just for your own growth and your own assessment. Okay, so another question we got, how do you bring up staff incentives? Do you speak to the health professional alone first? Yeah, that's a good question because I guess I assumed that you guys knew that when you did the implementation meeting, you're really only doing the implementation meeting with the health professional, the key decision makers. So those decision makers that did the proposal meeting, those are the decision makers that'll do the implementation meeting. Now, it may be different. Like I'm booking a discovery meeting. I'm in the process of just identifying the date now. It's Warm, one of my new team members' doctor, and one of the things he said to me was he wanted to have the discovery meeting with his massage therapist because wants her to be very involved in the nutraMetrix flow. So I'm going to do the discovery meeting with both of them, and then I'm going to probably wind up doing the proposal meeting with both of them. But I think maybe I'll have a conversation with the doctor beforehand to say, so there may be, how do you want to work this relation? I mean, she's your employee and this is a job, or are we going the HP executive route and she's ideally going to set up her own account. So there's some, in that situation, I'm going to want to have a conversation with the health professional privately, maybe even after the discovery meeting before I get to the proposal. So who knows? But that's why I would not have the implementation meeting with the staff. Now, if the office manager is the wife, then naturally she's going to want to be in the implementation meeting, and that's fine. But yeah, I just really talked to the doctor first, and then, I'll share with, what he said to the staff. Okay. All right. Well, you guys have a wonderful Thursday. Keep growing and definitely, just do your daily tasks. Put that 8-hour timesheet, on the refrigerator like I did, and then just go do your daily tasks. Okay? Have a great Thursday.